friends, and welcome. No, you're tilted. Absolutely unacceptable. Good God. Well, hello friends, and welcome to Ariel's Twilight Years, how to be a really old model. I already had a go at shooting this video while I was in Fuerteventura shooting content for my OnlyFans and many vids and clips for sale last week. And a strange thing happened to me. I turned on the camera and then I just looked at it and couldn't speak. And the reason for that is that my mental health has taken a bit of a dip. I spent quite a lot of last year gradually reducing my dose of antidepressants, which I've been on for quite some time. And I got down to a really low dose, a low enough dose that it wouldn't be prescribed. And I was feeling really good about that. But I did do it a bit too fast, I think, and I started to feel not amazing by around the 20th of December. But I had COVID, so I thought it might be just that. Then over Christmas I had a really nice time, but on my own in Fuerteventura, which is something I would generally really enjoy, my mental state did start to dive. And although I managed to do all my compulsory work, when it came to doing a YouTube video, I just discovered that I couldn't. And I wasn't overly concerned until a week ago when I had a proper mental health crash and spent a couple of days, probably 4 days, feeling absolutely dreadful. The reason I'm talking about this is because I know, as someone who sometimes does struggle with my mental health, I find it so immensely useful when the people who I look to for entertainment and information on YouTube and platforms like YouTube, when they are honest about mental health struggles, because I think it is still quite stigmatised and I stigmatise myself for struggling with it. So, I wanted to mention that, and I also wanted to mention that I am feeling a lot better this week. Firstly, I have slightly increased my dose of antidepressants, which I think is just a responsible thing to do at this point, because my last step down had been a bit of a fast one, and I probably shouldn't have done it quite so quickly. But the other reason I'm feeling quite a lot better this week is that I have started taking mindfulness seriously again. This is a thing that so many people talk about, and I know it's really easy to close your ears to it because it sounds really boring, and sometimes it's quite unappealing, the idea of taking control of your own health through your own efforts. It sometimes feels much more appealing, the idea of just being given a pill or given some sort of medication that will make you better. However, I had really great success with mindfulness technique 10 years ago when a long-term medical condition I have flared up and I was in a lot of pain. I managed to cope with that pain and reduce that pain through doing a lot of mindfulness meditation over a period of about 3 months. But then I started to feel better. I did find mindfulness a bit boring. I got bored with it and I stopped doing it almost altogether. Then when my mental health took a big dip in 2021, which is the dip that I'm now recovering from and reducing my antidepressants to escape from, I made a kind of half-hearted attempt at mindfulness again. And again, as I started to get better, I stopped doing it. So this time I have paid for an app which is called Waking Up. It has been designed by Sam Harris, who I have very fond feelings about because it was his book, Letter to a Christian Nation, which gave me the courage to have a go at being an atheist. I decided to try being an atheist for one Christmas and see how I felt, and I loved it. But I'm not sure how long it would have taken me to take that step if it hadn't been for reading Sam Harris's very reassuring book. So when I saw that he had put his name to a mindfulness app, I thought I would give it a go. And the great thing from my point of view is you have to pay for it. It's about £150. So I think the fact that I've paid for it will make me feel like I have to do it because I want to get value for money. And even in the 5 days since I started it, I feel quite dramatically different. So I'm not being paid to promote this. I've not got any relationship with this app or with this person, but I did want to mention it just in case you, like me, struggle with really sometimes horrific and frightening intrusive thoughts, because I have to say this is a really great effect I've had in less than a week, and I certainly wouldn't have got that as a result of increasing a dose of antidepressants, not in that time period. So I will let you know how I get on with that. I just wanted to mention it first so I'm honest with you, and secondly just in case the fact that I am taking mindfulness meditation seriously might possibly help you to consider doing the same. So onwards with the subject of this YouTube video, which I am making because I get regularly contacted by people who are trying to book me for things that I don't do. Now, I do not blame these people for not knowing that I don't do these things, unless they ask me repeatedly after I've said I don't do them. But I thought I would like to make a video where I explain my reasoning for not doing some of the activities that people often seem to expect that I will do, because these activities do tend to go along with modelling, at least for some of us. So, let's get started. First, why I don't do sessions. Lots of people try to hire me either as a dom or as a sub or as both, or to do tickling sessions as opposed to photo shoots, and I do not do these. There are several reasons actually. The first reason is that when I was 21 I worked as a pole dancer in a club for a little while, and I really liked the job, but after a few weeks I realised it felt like a really empty experience for me because I wasn't producing anything. However well I danced that night in the club and however much money I'd made, there was nothing tangible to take with me. I didn't have a performance on videotape, I couldn't show it to anyone, I'd not created a piece of art, and that bothered me. It bothered me similarly when I worked in theatre as a Shakespeare actress. I didn't like it that after the show was ended it was reduced to a line on my CV. So one of the reasons I love the job that I do is because I make things that have a lasting value. People can watch videos that I made 20 years ago and enjoy them, and that makes me really happy. So the idea of doing fetish or sexual sessions with someone who's not a photographer, where there's no record of what we did, it just seems really empty to me and I don't want to do it. That's only one of the reasons though. Another reason is that I've never wanted to be a provider of a sexual experience. I don't want to be in charge of giving someone in real life, in real time, a sexual experience. For me, that just feels too intimate. I'm very, very happy to make work that people then view and have sexual experiences of their own, but I just don't want to be in the room creating that with someone. It feels too much like a partner relationship and I'm not comfortable with it. So even though I know I would probably make 4 or 5 times as much money if I did that, I just don't want to. Also, and this is perhaps even more important, I don't want anyone trying to give me a sexual experience. I'm quite happy with the very one-sided nature of what I do. That I get naked and I do sexual things, but no one gets to get naked and do sexual things back at me. And there's a reason for that. I'm very comfortable with my own nudity and sexuality. I'm not very comfortable with the idea of handling someone else's in real time, so I don't do it. I really don't like the idea of, for example, doing a spanking session and the person spanking me trying to turn me on, like trying to push my buttons. I just don't want someone who I don't have a personal relationship with finding that kind of stuff out about me. Honestly, I personally feel that is too precious. Now obviously people have very, very different ideas of what is precious to them, what is intimate to them, and so some people clearly do not share my feelings about this, and nothing I say on this video is intended to make other people feel bad about their parameters. I'm just talking about my own personal ones, and while I can see that a lot of people really thrive doing sessions, it's not for me. I just don't want to give that kind of access to my body away to people who I don't know and don't necessarily trust and won't necessarily like. Because one of the great things about being a BDSM model for me is that I can view people's work before I decide whether to let them work with me. And if I go and look at a bondage producer's work and I don't like the way he looks as though he's handling the models he's working with, I don't need to go and work with him. The idea of booking a session with someone who then might not be competent or might not be sensitive, it's a really horrible idea. I like being able to screen the people who get to handle my body, and for me that has been a really positive experience. I like the fact that for all the people I might potentially work with professionally in this field, there is a show reel for them online. I can decide whether I think they're a good match or not, and the idea of booking in a session with someone who is an unknown to me, they might be the most lovely person, but they might not be accurate with a cane, or they might not be safety conscious with rope, and I don't want to risk my body to someone whose work is too much of an unknown. A thing I get asked a lot is whether I will dominate people, whether in a session or whether I will shoot femdom content with me doing ball busting or tying up men or spanking men. And I do not want to do this, and I don't think you're ever going to see me do this. I know some people who start off as submissive then discover a dominant side later on in life. I mean, I'm 20 years into this and I've not had a moment of thinking, oh wow, I think I'm about to start switching. It just makes me want to cry. The few times I felt pressurised to do it on camera, I think always to other female performers. I mean, sometimes it has made me cry. I absolutely hate it, and I've always said, for me, I would rather never get to do kinky stuff again in my life than have to be a dom for the rest of my life. I would rather go without than play that role, because it is so uncomfortable to me and it is so upsetting to me. Again, nothing against the people who do it, and I'm glad there are people who enjoy it, but not me. And I don't want a body of work that doesn't reflect me, that doesn't reflect who I really am. I can totally understand why the lure of better pay and better conditions, in that you're not sacrificing your body so much if you're a dom rather than a sub. I can see why some people who are naturally inclined towards being submissive, I can see why they investigate their dom side professionally. It makes commercial sense. But the work that I produce and that I leave behind me for future audiences, it really matters to me, and I want it to have been truthful. I want it to reflect me. That's not to say I don't do stuff that doesn't reflect me, because sometimes I take custom videos that represent fetishes that aren't mine, but I specifically don't want to put work into the world that is properly the opposite of me, and the idea of dominating a man on camera, for example, just feels so far removed from me. I would really rather not. And I don't want to kind of drown out the work that I've produced that does feel relevant and personal to me. So I would like that work to remain visible, and I don't want to drown it out with a whole load of femdom content. And I know some people watching this will think of the monologues they've seen me shoot where I do appear to be dominating someone because I'm dominating the camera, and that's absolutely true. I don't know why I'm comfortable with that. I think it's just that there are no consequences, so I can threaten terrible things to this imaginary person, but it's never going to actually happen, and I'm much more comfortable with it that way. Oh dear, this is one that I always feel really bad about saying no to. I don't want to do sexting, and I don't want to do dick ratings. I get asked a lot on my OnlyFans. And the fact is, above everything else, I just don't want to lie, because people aren't asking me to act this stuff. They're not asking me to play their headmistress or Mrs. Thatcher giving them a dick rating. They're asking me to give them a dick rating or me to sext them. And I don't want to lie to someone. I don't want to lie to someone whether there's money involved or not. It just feels really upsetting. So I wouldn't want to pretend I liked the look of someone's dick if I didn't. And I wouldn't want to hurt their feelings and say that I didn't like their dick. And also I kind of reject the idea that a dick should look a certain way anyway. I feel like the person it's attached to is so much more important. I understand that some people really want to have dick ratings, and I don't pretend to understand this because I do not have a penis. But I'm not the person to do it, because I just don't feel as though it's a very kind way to think about your body, really. I suppose I'd be so opposed to anyone giving me a rating for any part of my body. I really just don't want to reciprocate by putting that kind of thing out into the world. And similarly, sexting, I don't want to pretend to be into stuff that I'm not into when I'm actually being myself. So I don't want to lie, and I think I'd be a pretty terrible texter if someone asked me to tell them how much I love stockings and I said I don't love stockings. I feel like that would be a terrible, terrible service to be offering. So that's why. Also, actual dirty talking is one of the things that I find extremely intimate, and the idea of doing it for money just doesn't appeal. I think it's something I want to keep private, and I'm scared it might lose some of its power if I did it commercially on a regular basis. And I think as a performer, it's really healthy to be able to recognise the things that you are perfectly happy to do commercially, And it's great to recognise if there are some things you want to keep back. I'm sure for some people there are no things they want to keep back, and that must be great. But for me, dirty talking as myself is something that's going to always happen behind closed doors, and I like it that way. And lastly, I suppose this is a kind of overarching reason, is I just don't want to make anyone feel like they're in an intimate relationship with me when they're not. Because one thing I've certainly noticed with the advent of sites like OnlyFans and the popularity of that, now obviously I use OnlyFans and I like it very much, but the virtual girlfriend experience clearly is a thing that a lot of people seem to really want, and therefore a lot of providers are providing. And I just see it as a little bit risky, really, because I don't want to kind of lead anyone on so that they think that they're more important in my life than they are, and I don't want to loom too important in their lives either. I feel like providing an erotic service is something I'm comfortable with. The idea that someone might spend their time sexting with me instead of talking to the people who are really in their life, that makes me anxious. And maybe I'm oversensitive, but I just feel like there's a lot of problems that could come along with that, like stalking. And I feel like if I had really led someone on with extensive sexting and telling them I missed them and telling them I wanted their body, I think I might feel a certain level of responsibility if they turned up at my door. And I don't think that's fair. That's not what I'd think if it happened to another performer, but if it happened to me, I think that's what I'd think, and so I just don't want to go down that route. And also I just don't want to trespass on the sexting I'm actually doing with my actual partner and the intimacy I actually have with my real life partner. It's not comfortable for me. Hello, here is my real life partner.
Real life partner.
Real life partner, darling. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, do you want to come and say hello to the friends?
In a minute.
Alright. I'm talking about why I don't do sexting and dick ratings, because I don't want to lie and go, oh my god, your cock is wonderful, but I don't want to tell the truth because that might be really hurtful, and I reject the idea of dick ratings at all because I don't want anyone thinking that the way their dick looks is important, because I think it makes you insecure. And also I very much don't want anyone to rate any part of my body ever. Do you feel any desire to have your dick rated?
No, I wonder, I can certainly see that there's a sub-element to it for some people that is like a humiliation degradation thing. Mm-hmm. So I think some people want their dicks rated in order for it to be rated badly, in order for it to be a humiliating, small dick thing, which I guess is harmless but is utterly not my thing.
No.
I don't really feel like it is right even to rate people on a sort of general physical attractiveness.
Oh,
but by the time you
sexual market value,
start dialing into individual things, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, meaningless, not least because the answer is it is to my taste or it is not to my taste. There's no absolute standard.
I've just realised that because the sexual market value, that whole ethos makes me so angry. No wonder I don't like the idea of dick ratings. Because I'm very, very fine making small penis humiliation videos, for example, but I'm playing a character. I'm playing a character that's directed by the customer. So I'm a schoolgirl telling him he's got a small dick, or I'm a headmistress, and that feels fine. But the idea of me, Ariel, tending to have an opinion on his dick, oh God, I just can't. And I say no a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Could probably buy another house if I said yes to all of them.
Probably could, yes.
But sometimes it's more important.
Buy me another house with other men's dicks, as it were.
They could be like the battlements.
Yes, or the railings outside, depending on size.
Absolutely charming.
Yes.
And finally...
Can I go now?
No.
Why not?
I want you to stay with me.
Oh.
And then I'll get you chips.
All right.
Finally, webcam. I tried it once and it just feels too much like sex, too intimate, far more than I'm comfortable with. And the reason for that is because it's interactive. I do not mind how much of a massive whore I appear in a video.
Unfortunate that, as it turns out.
But it turns out that having someone interact just makes me feel like, oh my God, are we engaged now?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
and I just realised in discussing this list, I just realised how incredibly prudish I still am. It's like I've got these areas where I'm not.
It's like I think everybody has. Like everybody has got some things that they don't like, and that's fine. There's no union guide or employee guide that says you have to do dick rating or webcam. And I agree that for me, webcam type stuff feels very, very intimate, especially if it's one-on-one.
Yeah.
And that is, especially if it's taking a long time. You know, I would feel like you had been having sex with somebody if you'd been doing sexy chat with them for an hour, which finished with them having an orgasm. And which is just, I don't feel that if they've watched an hour-long movie that we've produced and end up having an orgasm. It doesn't...
I think the asynchronous nature of the orgasm helps a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But, as with all these things, more power to the people who do these things and who are comfortable with it. I always, if people write to me and ask for these things, I always try to point them in the direction of a performer who does do this, because obviously what you want, if you're buying one of these services, is you want a provider who's actually comfortable with it, because they'll do a good job.
You say that. You say that, but it's not true, is it? And it's one of the biggest mysteries to me.
There is a certain
in 20 plus years in the industry, there is a certain big group, it's not a small group, from amateur photographers through custom video customers, through website members, through people on Twitter, who seem to only be interested in getting a service from somebody who is reluctant to provide it. They're removing the virginity for webcam or for having a butt plug or whatever.
Yes.
And that I find a bit absurd.
It is absurd. It is, and it's really distasteful. Fortunately, I think the larger group are people who want you to be comfortable with it, so they're asking because they think you might be. Yeah. You say no, and they are very happy to move on.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for those people.
Yes.
All right, you can go if you want to now, because I realise that wasn't the end. I've got one more.
Right.
But you can stay if you want. And the final thing that actually also comes up a lot is I no longer want to work with collectors who are just creating pictures for their own private collection. And this is one that I used to do. I used to do an awful lot of work with amateurs who had no intention to publish, which I see as a very different situation from amateurs who don't have a professional reason to shoot, but who are aiming to produce a product, whether or not that is going to be for sale or whether it's going to be freely available. And the reason for that is very simple. I got assaulted by a collector of bondage pictures, so I went to work with him and I was sexually assaulted by him. And it's a shame that his behaviour has made me more cautious, but if I'm honest with myself, as I look back through my career, a lot of my worst experiences were with people in that category. So, in order to be safer, I do not do that anymore. I think that for some of the amateur photographers who work in this way, it's really a cheap way of getting a session. So actually, rather than doing a photo shoot, I think they should be honest with themselves and book a model who actually does sessions and go and have a session with her. Respect her boundaries, of course, but I'm not the person to offer this anymore. I'm too nervous about the same thing happening to me again, and I feel like having a focus on producing something together, collaborating to produce something which is intended for public consumption, just makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Not to say that people who are producing published work necessarily are going to be safe to work with, but my experience has been a lot more positive since I've made that decision. And also, it's just, as I said earlier, someone who's a collector who doesn't work with professional models on a regular basis and doesn't publish work, you can't see their work, so you can't judge their skill level anywhere near as easily. So you can't check references so easily from other performers. It's harder to negotiate boundaries because you can't see their body of work in the same way that you can with a professional. And so as a result, I no longer work with collectors, but I am still interested in working with professionals and with serious amateurs, because some of the very best people I work with do not make a full-time living from photography. I'm absolutely fine with that. I just don't want to be stuck in a hotel room with someone who really wanted an escort but couldn't be bothered to find one or couldn't afford to pay for one. So, those are my answers. I hope you find those useful. Thank you, as always, for watching. I really hope if you have your own mental health struggles that my talking about it might be a bit useful for you, and I will continue to update you on my mindfulness meditation journey because I hope that might be helpful for you. Anyway, I will be back next month with more, hopefully better mental health. It does feel a lot better than it did. So that's goodbye from me. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Bye-bye.